The political panel all-stars up shortly, Whānau, but now this week's extra one-on-one in 10 with the Speaker of the House, the Right Honourable Gerry Brownlee, on the quality of democracy under his time as Speaker, his thoughts on Scrutiny Week and why democracy is so bloody important. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful. Can you hear me? Please.
Sorry.
Oh,
Mr. Bradbury, apologies. You're not coming through very loud.
Okay, I'll be...
Please note, I called you Mr. Bradbury.
I'll be louder. Mr. Speaker, you have been Speaker now for almost one full term as a Parliament TV geek, policy nerd and Democratic Institute fanboy. I think your stewardship as Speaker and defender of debate in Parliament has been right up there with the mighty Lockwood Smith. What have been your highlights and lowlights in your first term as Speaker?
Oh, look, I think, what we're seeing at the moment in Parliament is the first time that we've had a genuinely MMP government where not one of the parties could do anything without the other two. And similarly, you're seeing a sort of in the opposition bench is a similar arrangement where there's no particular dominance in the opposition side either. So that creates a very interesting dynamic in Parliament, and one that I certainly haven't seen in my time before. So I suppose that's if you're a real geek for democracy, then I think that's a positive. The low light still has to be the tearing up of the bill and the international sort of focus that came on that after, and then it wasn't the Haka that followed. It was, in fact, the interruption of a vote, the attempt to prevent a vote from being called, even though the position that party was taking was going to win the day. So, perhaps a lack of understanding by even people who are working in the place about how important democracy and consideration is.
Well, let's talk about that, because many in Aotearoa, New Zealand, were angry over the ruling against Te Pāti Māori members when they performed their haka. But you were, as you're pointing out, standing for very important principles that are sacrosanct in a place like Parliament. What were those principles, and did you agree with the unprecedented punishment that was handed out?
Well, first point is what I'm saying is that when you've finished the debate and you're voting, then everyone should be silent and respect the votes that are being cast by the various parties who've been elected into the Parliament. And in that case, that wasn't respected, and that's an absolute breach of the trust that everyone has that our democracy is a safe place to exercise your views. And so, if they'd come along earlier and said, at the end of the bill, when the result is declared by the clerk, or the speaker, I should say, then we would like to, perform a haka. That probably wouldn't have been a problem, because
right.
We often have that at the end of
Sure.
treaty settlement bills and other such. And we live in this country, not in any other Western democracy. So that's not really what the problem was. And I think the real point is that Parliament should be a place where people can come and express the views that they want to. I've just listened respectfully to Chloe's views. She would know that I don't agree with many of those views, but my job is to make sure that she and others have the opportunity to express those views in our Parliament.
During Scrutiny Week, you said that there would need to be a relocation of Parliament for repairs. Can you give us an idea of what kind of repairs, how long you think they'll take, and would Parliament itself have to be relocated?
No, it's not the Parliament building, it's the Beehive itself,
right.
The executive wing. That building was built somewhere between 1972 and 1979.
Yep.
Took about 7 or 8 years to build the thing. And that's now, 50-something years ago. And buildings tend to be built with a life of about 50 years. So things like the ventilation system is in pretty bad shape. The electrical wiring is in bad shape. It's had many internal alterations of type, smaller maybe rather than larger, but also the exterior is showing signs of concrete fatigue. Those fins on the outside are actually structural. and all the windows are starting to leak because steel and single glaze. So
Right.
a lot of that sort of just work that is very noisy. We also have, not the best deployment of space in that building.
Sure.
The ideal would be to have 28 ministerial suites in there rather than the current 18. So to do all that, you do need to substantially vacate the building.
Right.
And that's something that a future parliament, I think, the next parliament, in fact, is going to have to wrestle with.
Where would they relocate to, Gerry? If you did have to go ahead with those kind of repairs and that upgrade, where would the ministers go?
There is a brand new building about to be commissioned next March to the rear of Parliament, and there's an opportunity for some relocation into there, and there are other spaces nearby. Some floors in Bowen House may be available, although I've got to say they're ridiculously expensive. And then, of course, you've got other government buildings nearby, so that the Treasury building, which they only occupy a number of floors in there, there might be some space in there. But there's also the Parliamentary Library, which is likely to be more available now that there's I think a more sensible look taken at some of the seismic requirements for buildings.
Okay.
So those are options that people would have to consider in the future.
You also argued in Scrutiny Week that Parliament needs more sitting days. Why is that?
No, not sitting days. I think sitting hours.
Right.
It could be achieved by sitting more days.
Yep.
But if you added an hour a day, you'd effectively pick up 5 weeks in a year. So that's the sort of calculation that I've asked parties to consider at the present time while we're going through the standing orders review. Parliament sits at the moment between 2 and 10 p.m. For 2 days a week, and between 2 and 6 p.m. on the Thursday. If those days all started at 1 o'clock, you'd still be able to have the mornings for caucus meetings, for select committees, and you would pick up that extra time.
You recently reached out to Stuff columnist Verity Johnston, who was on my team, who was a teammate for Thursday's Keith Locke Memorial Debate, and you wanted to sincerely convey to her that democracy is worth fighting for. And she was genuinely moved by your authenticity at a time when very ugly populist movements are threatening Western nations around the world and people have given up on our institutions. Why is fighting for democracy so important?
It's hard to understand what freedoms we could lose when you live in a country like ours, where you have quite considerable freedoms, and you can feel sort of no threat when you say things that might potentially in other jurisdictions be so considered so terrible that you'd be taken off the streets. It's very hard for people to get their heads around that, but you don't have to look too far around the world to see that sort of thing happening. I think there are some really interesting influences around at the moment. I have concern about AI and what it is doing and what it might do to influence information flows. We've already got the scourge of social media. When I say scourge, only from the point of view of the negative stuff. There's a heck of a lot of good stuff around that.
Yep.
It's like, we shouldn't be frightened of this. People used to be frightened of electricity and internal combustion cars.
No one wants to be a Luddite.
Probably is now because of the CO2 emissions. But the point is that technology, if you embrace it in the correct way, it'll be good for society. But when you start to lose those basic points that every man and woman should be free to express themselves and to live within the constraints of society's rules and agreed rules. If you're looking at losing that, it's not tidy.
Finally, comrade, talking of the quality of democracy, in its first 400 days, this government used urgency to push 133 stages across 51 unique bills, with 57% of those stages applied to laws rushed through Parliament in a single day without a select committee process. We've been talking about how important believing in democracy is. How can abusing urgency to ram through controversial legislation without the due process and democratic scrutiny 57% of the time be good for democracy?
Well, that statistic just proves my point. Parliament needs more time. And we have the pressure these days of everyone wanting stuff in a hurry, and parties wanting to get their manifesto promises out there as quickly as they possibly can. And when you're limited by time, naturally there's going to be a desire to use the urgency process. But I'll tell you what, every government's done it. It's not something that's new. And I can remember people railing against Michael Cullen for regularly putting the House into urgency. I remember myself being criticised for putting the House into urgency, and we both had similar roles in government. And it's carrying on. The issue is, how do you create more time? And I think one other thing is that the modern technology that we have now is meaning that far more people are making submissions on bills than they ever have in the past. And that's also, once again, puts that pressure on time. So I don't think it's the terrible abuse that some people seem to want to think it is. We have a short electoral system, a term, I should say, 3 years, and people get to have their say at the end of it. It's it's all about time.
Thank you, Gerry, for sharing your insight and oversight this evening. All power to your arm. Let's talk to you again before the election. Thank you, comrade.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bradbury, and carry on. You can say what you like. We're living in a free country.
Amen. Preach it, brother.